Hi everybody, it's me, Corey T, and I'm so excited because today on the channel we have got Tanya, who is all the way over in Canada, and she is a somatic trauma therapist, and we have been collaborating together over the last 5, 6 months or something like that.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to bring her onto the channel because I talk a lot about the nervous system. I've been doing so much work with my nervous system and have found enormous benefit in doing so. But Tanya knows the nervous system and somatic healing therapy from a different angle to what I know. And I just wanted her to come on and for us to have a conversation about this work and why it's so awesome and it's so important and how it can help you, basically. So, welcome to the channel.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm
Oh,
excited about
I
this.
should also say that it is Tanya's birthday today. So if you want to wish her a happy birthday, I'm sure she would love that. Um,
Yeah, all at once. Yeah.
and I'm so grateful that you've decided to spend your birthday doing this conversation with me.
Me
So
too.
yeah, happy birthday.
Thank
Right.
you.
So do you want to tell people what you do, what you call yourself in your work, and what it is that you do and how you got into it?
Yeah, how much time do we have? Because there's a lot there. Um, so I am a counselor in private practice in Canada, and I've been doing this for about 12 years. And I've been doing the trauma work, the somatic trauma work for probably, I'm just counting back, probably close to 9 years now, I think. And people come to me because often they've gone to see other practitioners, other counselors, and they can't quite get to the root of what's going on in their system. And the training that I've done on learning about the nervous system and about how it manifests in our lives when we're not regulated um, helps me to guide those people into learning and repairing what's going on in their own system.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. That's what draws me into this is what I found is that when you start to heal your nervous system, you start to make new decisions, you start to have new thoughts, you start to think and feel differently, which then of course manifests different results and different outcomes in your life. So
Yeah.
working on your nervous system, working on my nervous system has been like transformational in creating new outcomes and different feelings and different sensations in relationships and in everything, really. So, yeah, it's
Yeah.
really powerful stuff that you're teaching people. So, I've written down some questions here that so that I don't forget anything that I want to ask you. Um, yeah, so what I've written there is why do you think understanding our nervous system is so important? Because it's not just understanding the nervous system, which is an important part of it, isn't it? But understanding your own nervous system, your personal nervous system. What would you say about that?
Mm, that's such a good question. I would say that in my experience with my own personal work that I've done in my nervous system and with clients that I've worked with, when we start to work at the level of the nervous system, it changes, like you said, it changes our experience of everything. And this is how I see it, and some other people who do this work may disagree with me, and I'm totally cool with that, is that we see life through this filter of our own experience, and when we're in a constant state of dysregulation, which we may not be aware of, like I wasn't aware that I was in nervous system dysregulation for literally most of my life until, like, what time is it now? So I feel like when we change things at that core level, the filters through which we experience life change. And I mean, obviously, as you might understand from that, it it changes everything, like our relationships, our health, the way that we perceive what's happening in our lives. Like if we're in a state of um, survival in our nervous system, we're going to perceive what's coming towards us as a threat. even when it's not, because of what's happening physiologically.
Yeah.
That's not always the case. It depends on sort of what state our autonomic nervous system is operating in, but that's really normal. You might meet somebody who you're like, "Hi, how are you?" and they like lash out at you, and there's like no reason for that, but they're running in a state where they're perceiving what's coming towards them,
Yeah.
perhaps not from a place of reality, but from like historical experience that hasn't been processed through their system yet.
Yeah. So that's so interesting. First of all, that doing this work not only helps you understand yourself, but other people too. So rather than taking things personally, you're better able to look at someone's reaction to you and go, wow, they are really dysregulated. So of course they're going to say these things or think these things, and maybe you can have a conversation. Actually, there was a book that I read called The Chimp Paradox. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's
No.
so good. It explains the nervous system and why people are the way they are in a really simple way. And what I took from that book was basically when someone's in their chimp mode, in their sort of animalistic, primal thinking, triggered mode, they will react in these kind of, they might react in aggressive ways, they might react anxiously, they might react abruptly, they might be rude, they might be snappy, they might be all of these different things. And when you see it in someone else, well, first of all, when you see it in yourself, you can recognize I've been activated by something. My nervous system, in this context, my nervous system has been activated by something. But when you see it in someone else, it's also regulating for yourself too, because you don't
Mm.
get sucked into it so much, because you can see it for what it is.
Yeah. And I love that you said that, because what I was thinking as you were talking is that if we don't have capacity in our system, like when I was learning about this work, it was described as the nervous system is like a container, and um, it's not about we have too much energy in the container and so we have to get rid of the energy. It's about the capacity of the container to hold the energy, because we want as much life energy accessible to us as possible, and we want to make sure our container, our nervous system, has lots of capacity to hold that so that we can engage in life in a really deep and meaningful way for us, and also for health and all the other reasons. So I would like to think that most people would be able to recognize that somebody is in their chimp brain, or sometimes we call it lizard brain,
Yeah.
um, that primal, survival place. But I think that might be a lot to expect from people until they've really done a significant amount of work, or if they have
Yeah.
that built-in capacity of being able to observe themselves. Because when we're in survival physiology, if you don't have that level of awareness and that differentiation, which is like it can be work to get there, then it feels like the only thing that's true is this thing that's like loud and scary and screaming at me.
Yeah.
And the work is to kind of do the work to create more capacity so that we have more opportunity to see that we have choice. In survival physiology, we don't have choice. And that's the point of it. We don't have choice. You have to run out of the burning house because that's how you're going to stay alive. But if
Yeah.
you're sitting in a restaurant and you're surrounded by people who love you and it feels like the house is burning down, well, then something's out of alignment. And then we need
Yeah.
to look at that.
And so another question that I had for people who uh might be wondering this as well is that how do we get dysregulated in the first place, and how does it last so long? And then how do we know when we're dysregulated? How can we start to bring awareness to ourselves, for us to be able to see, oh wow, yeah, I'm dysregulated? How can we start to bring awareness into ourselves?
Okay, you might have to remind me of the bits of questions because I
That
might
was
go off
like
on a
three
tangent on this
questions.
one.
Sorry, I asked like, okay, the first question was, how do we get dysregulated in the first place? And the story of our childhood and things like that. How does it sort of seep into adulthood?
That is a really, really good question. What I want to say is, if you're born, then welcome dysregulation. Like, as we enter this planet and we're subject to, the people and the experiences around us, we're going to experience dysregulation. And when I'm working with clients, and as I learned this work myself, I use the words trauma and overwhelm interchangeably, because really what trauma is something, and it's the experience of the nervous system not able to process something coming towards you because it's too much, it's too fast. And that creates dysregulation. Now we can go into dysregulation, and if we have healthy access to regulation, our system will go into dysregulation, do its process, and then come back and land in regulation. It's when we go into dysregulation and the system gets stuck that it becomes an issue. And that can happen as early as gestation. It can happen during birth. We can have a really great life up until we're, in our 30s, and then a significant event can happen and our nervous system will experience that as trauma, and then we're going to be in dysregulation until we kind of repair
Yeah.
what happened there. So there's so many things that can be true
It feels
around that
like
question.
it feels like there is so much post-traumatic stress and complex post-traumatic stress that is labeled as other things in, the medical field and in, mental health.
Mm,
And often it sounds like, I mean, it feels to me that we get dysregulated so young, and then we get stuck there in these survival habits and patterns, and we stay there because no one knew and no one was aware and no one was there to help us bring us back into safety in our
yeah,
body. And then we learned that way of living and being.
yeah,
And then, or maybe that happened when you were 25 or 30 or 45 or whatever, something happened and there was no understanding of the physiology of what was happening, and therefore that became a survival reaction or whatever that
yeah,
continued. And
yeah.
then that trauma, I suppose, is then this is where I need your opinion on this, or your knowledge on this, because when it comes to having trauma in the body from an event or things that have happened in the past, or relationships or whatever it is that has created what we hear all the time, stored trauma in the body. So, you know initially when I heard about releasing trauma from the body, what I assumed that meant was, I've got all this invisible stuff in me that I guess I just need to cry out. I just need to do loads and loads of crying, and then it will all be gone. And then it will all be gone. And that's how I understood it. And I think lots of people don't really understand what it means to release trauma. What does it actually mean? Because like this work, I suppose, is learning to find a way consciously to teach your body how to return to safety in the body after having many many years or months or years or of not knowing or being even aware that you were dysregulated in some way, or that you were in survival mode. So bringing that awareness into how to create a feeling of safety in the body. But like this part of it, this releasing trauma, what does that do? How do we do it, and what does it even mean?
Okay, this is going to be an all-nighter, right?
Yeah.
We're going to go the distance on this one. Well, first of all, I just want to say you said something really interesting. Actually, that was such a beautiful, juicy piece of conversation there. You said something about, I can't remember exactly how you said it, but what it made me think of was that when we have supportive community to receive us after we have been through something significant, the chances of us experiencing trauma from that lasts very, very low. Um, and there's lots of sort of experience and information out there that is sort of evidence of this, that people who have a good sense of community, a good support system, they're going to get through the challenging stuff in life and come out the other side and be able to find, regulation and access to their own safety system again, if they had access to that in the first place, because they've got that support. When we go through things alone and we don't get the support we need, that's when our nervous system and our whole self is really compromised, because we're in it alone. So it felt really important to say that piece. The other thing is that if we never had an experience of safety in the first place in our blueprint, in our physiology, whether that was because something happened really early that was overwhelming to our little nervous systems, and we don't have cognitive processing on board at those ages, so it just happens directly to our body. We just take it in, and it creates this experience that then we don't know how to regulate ourselves, and we don't even know what's happening. It's just a full-on survival experience. If we didn't learn safety, if we didn't have people around us who were able to hold that with us, or if they didn't have regulated nervous systems themselves that could be available to us, then our little baby nervous systems need to get really creative on how to tolerate first that level of overwhelm, and then the fact that there's really no place to land to sort of be supported in that. And many people, their nervous systems figure that out, but a return to safety isn't always guaranteed if we never had safety laid down in our nervous system in the first place. Often a lot of the work that I do with clients is we have to build that experience of safety. How would I even recognize it if I had it?
Yeah.
Into the blueprint. And then that's the foundation that we can start, building regulation from. Don't get me wrong, people figure this stuff out physiologically all the time. We're brilliant. And we want to be able to repair those experiences because it makes a difference. It makes a huge difference in our quality of life. When you're talking about releasing trauma, this is a really juicy one because I have a friend and colleague, and if she watches this, she's going to know who she is, who in our training, she brought up this insight that she had. She's a physiotherapist and a counselor and a unicorn in this work. And she said that she sees trauma as an unintegrated resource. So what that means, in my understanding, is trauma is an experience in the nervous system. It's our life energy that didn't get to mobilize and act on our behalf when the circumstances happened in our lives. Because it didn't get to sort of complete its process.
Yeah, complete the cycle.
That's right. Then it stays in the nervous system, and it can either loop in the nervous system, or it kind of holds literally in our bodies, waiting for an opportunity to complete. So when we get an opportunity to do this work and complete those, we call them thwarted defensive responses, then that life energy that was stored and holding and thwarted actually gets to be reintegrated into our system as life energy that we get to use for creativity and digesting our food and having cell repair and productive rest and healthy social engagement in our relationships. We get to access the life energy for what it was originally there for, because it's not being held in our system anymore, waiting to help us survive the thing that it didn't get to help us with when it happened.
Yeah.
So I don't know that we release it. I mean, there are releases that happen through the system for sure. There's inflammation that lifts off the system, and we do process emotion, and we do get to finish those, responses in our body that needed to fight or flee.
Yeah.
But the trauma itself, that physiological energy, I mean, it's kind of a mystery to me, and there's probably people who have like direct scientific answers about this. I'm not one of them, but I see it as our body gets to reintegrate it and reorganize with it after we do this work, so that we can use it, in a fullness of life.
Yeah, like the way it wants to be used. It's so interesting, because I often talk to people about allowing yourself to feel what you feel, because a lot of that energy that comes up, that anxiety or stress or whatever it is, the survival response, is scary to feel. And if we haven't been taught to feel it, if we haven't been allowed to feel it, or we've grown up in a place where there's been shame for feeling certain things, or we've not known how to support ourselves, or not known how to validate our own emotions, when those feelings come up, many times we'll push it down, and we won't know what to do with it. So the cycle never gets to complete itself. So this is such a big reason of why I'm often telling people to allow yourself to feel what you feel. If you feel anxious, be anxious. Do what anxiety wants to do, whether that's shaking. This is where I suppose the body part of it, the somatic part of it, or feeling what you're feeling comes in. You know, if I'm feeling anxious now, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm feeling anxious. What does this energy want me to do? What does it want me to do? Because it wants me to do something. And if I just sit down, it's not going anywhere apart from just to let me know that it's here. And with this awareness that I have, I think Teal Swan said, once you become aware of your patterns and your, you know, your physiology, and you do nothing about it, then you're in hell. Then you have to sit there in hell, because you're more aware of the sensations than you were before, but you're not doing anything about it. And so what I often tell people to do is feel what you feel it, like that. Often, especially in the manifesting community, isn't it, we're like told to, you know, this thing of living in the end, which is an idea which I think is misunderstood. I think it's very misunderstood, where people feel like they need to feel good all the time. They need to feel good all the time, when that's not the case. That's not what living in the end is. We're human and we have all of these different emotions. But I think part of this work, definitely for me, part of this work in healing my nervous system has been just so transformational, and given me a sense of wholeness and groundedness when I allow myself and allow my body to feel what it feels, and then let it show me the way. Let my body lead me to what it wants me to do, so that it can complete a cycle. If I want to cry, I cry. I don't try and push it down. If I'm angry, because that's another thing as well, the stored anger is an interesting one, I find, because it's such a big emotion. There's a lawnmower that's just about to come past. Hopefully. Can you hear it?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's so many emotions that we haven't learned to feel properly, and we've you know, tried to sort of squeeze them into a smaller space, or we've, you know, not expressed them fully. And then maybe that's where they get stuck then, you know, and they get stuck in our system, and then keep repeating, and then keep repeating, and then someone gets diagnosed with anxiety disorder, or something like that, and maybe this is why.
Yeah, that's, you said so many good things in that sentence. A couple of things that pop up as I was listening to you is, and you and I have talked about this before, I think, about this idea of like being able to listen to the body, and, you know, what do you want to express, and then giving it room for that. And that requires a certain level of trust in your own system. And what can happen when we have trauma in our nervous systems is that trust has been broken. And when we start to feel something, even if we give ourselves permission, we can go into dysregulation and then realize, I don't know how to come out of this. And the nervous system escalates and escalates and escalates. And something that can be helpful, if that's our experience, because there's so many manifestations of nervous system dysregulation, health-wise and behavior-wise, and in so many ways, is to slow it down and just do a little bit.
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean, you know, well, I'll just cry one tear and then I'll see how that feels. It's more like, how do I notice when things start to feel like it's too much?
Yeah.
Because in our society, I think we have a history of overriding ourselves in order to like get stuff done, or get through something, or heal, or, you know, I spent this money, so I'm going to do it 100%. But in that, we do override some of our impulses to like recognize, this feels like too much right now. Or this is a great idea, but my body's actually saying no. Like, how do we find that information on the inside, so we can actually rebuild that trust? And be able to have the capacity to let emotion move through, and then we can come back and land on the other side, or feel the anxiety, which there's a woman that works in the field that I do, who defines anxiety as an overabundance of unprocessed sensation in the body, unprocessed experience. Because people think anxiety is a head thing, because that's often where you feel it, but it's a full container.
And that is why I suppose people spend years and years in talking therapy, and then it's very difficult for them to, you know, feel the tangible progress that they understand. I find this as well, like with myself, for years and years and years, I understood myself and have always, you know, had a great understanding of why I might be the way I am. You know, things that happened, I can connect the dots, I can see it all. I was in therapy for years and years and years, but still my physiology wasn't catching up. And I realized from doing this work and from learning about the nervous system and using my body that I needed to incorporate my body, because I hadn't been. My survival response had been taking me up to my head, problem solving, problem solving, problem solving, trying to
Right.
figure it out, figure it out. And without using the body, I would have stayed up there. I would have just stayed
Right.
there forever, probably, you know,
Yes.
because that's the
And
habit.
yeah. And let's not sort of dismiss the fact that that is a very good strategy. And
Yeah,
when we
yeah,
don't have other things available, you know, that came on at some point because it helped.
yeah.
It
And
helped us get
also,
through stuff.
I think there is definitely something in co-regulation, you know, like this, a lot of this stuff is self-regulation stuff that we're learning how to do, learning how to return to safety in the body. But I definitely, absolutely love and value my coaches or mentors that I've had conversations with and shared openly with, and where I haven't known how the hell to return to safety in my body, that co-regulation has been so incredibly valuable to me.
Yeah.
You know, like I think there is always um talking is just part of regulation. I think it's that's why we do it. We're
Yes.
social beings, aren't we? And you know,
Yeah.
I think it's sort of built into our nervous system to feel regulated whenever we can share and connect with someone openly and authentically. And
Yeah.
yeah, definitely there's been moments where, you know, despite knowing all of this stuff, or knowing as much as I can possibly know at this point in my life, you know, where I felt really dysregulated and thought, I don't know how. I know I'm gonna feel better, but right now nothing seems to be working. I
Mhm.
don't know what to do. I've done all the things and I'm really, really still dysregulated. So that is when, for me, I will turn to someone that I know that I can talk to about it. And I really think that co-regulation is part of nervous system regulation too. Knowing who your people are, who your places are, who your things are, your safe
Yeah.
things, that where, you know, I think we've talked about quite a lot of times, you know, how you know, something that you often ask me when we're just having a chat will be, oh, how did your nervous system find that? How did your nervous system feel around these people? How did your nervous system feel in that place? And it's a really good question to start to ask yourself often, how's my nervous system feeling? That was the other thing I was going to ask you. How do you know, how do people know when they're dysregulated? What awareness can people start to bring to themselves?
This is one of the questions that comes up doing counseling with people, is becoming really good detectives of how you start to recognize when your nervous system is going into its trauma pattern. And for everybody it's different, but there are some things that are pretty similar in a lot of people. It can look like a tightening in the chest, tightening in the throat, feelings of pressure in the body. A lot of it can be upper body, um, but that's not necessarily always the case. Energy in the legs, energy in the arms. People's faces can get scrunchy. You know, people feel emotion just coming to the surface, but then they also feel something that's trying to like hold it down. And we don't really have this awareness accessible unless A, you're really good at paying attention to yourself, or B, someone's asking you specific questions about how you notice that.
Mm,
And so for everyone, you know, our patterns kind of kick in differently, but there are some similar qualities to all of them. Also, there's the experience of just shutting down, where then like I don't feel everything, everything's
yeah,
numb. Do I even have a body? um, I feel kind of floaty, and this actually feels nice. I'd rather be feeling this than the other thing I was just
yeah,
feeling. So there's a number of different ways people can recognize, and everyone's are different, and some people don't, and it's a lot of work to get that information, because being in the body may never have felt safe.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And that's the thing. That's why I think what you're doing is so awesome for people who, are just learning as well, like who they are and how, learning to recognize the way that they respond and the way that they're physically feeling or not feeling, you know.
right.
And if
Yeah,
they haven't been feeling for a long time, understanding why that is and understanding, yeah, connecting the dots. That's where I think the talking bit comes in. You know,
yeah,
the talking therapy is incredibly useful for understanding why you react the way that you react, why you feel the way you feel. And then the body and the somatic stuff can really help to bring a wholeness to the whole thing. In this work, I think
mm,
you've had this um experience as well, because this is the thing that I tell people a lot as well, that we can talk about this all day, but like until you've like experienced it, until you've felt it in your body, you'll
mm,
cognitively understand it. You'll be able to cognitively understand it. But what I've experienced through doing this work is a sense of awareness about myself, about who I am, my sense of self, a sense of wholeness that I wanted to feel intuitively, not knowing what it was for really my whole life.
yeah,
Um, and it started for me with little glimmers of, oh, what was that? What was that feeling? That felt
yeah,
nice. Little milliseconds of, oh, I felt really like, I don't know, I guess the word's whole or really awake or
mm,
something like that, like really me, really peaceful, just something like that, some kind of wholeness that came from dropping down from my head to my body. That
mm,
that
mm,
was the most interesting shift.
mm.
Um
I love that you were able to notice that. I think that's such an important piece of being able to do this work and attend to ourselves in this way is, can you recognize when something's feeling good or even different than
yeah,
the thing that doesn't feel good that you're feeling all the time? Because this is the nature of trauma physiology, is it's demanding, it's loud, it's trying to get our attention. It wants to be the only thing that's true because it's the energy of it is actually life-saving. It's trying to save our life.
yeah,
At some point it came on because it was trying to help us at that level. So when we can notice that something feels better or less bad or different, to recognize how we really notice that, like, oh,
yeah,
I feel a softening in my chest, or my face feels lighter, or my left big toe is sparkling, or I don't know, I'm just making it up.
yeah,
But when we can recognize how we notice those things, that's really, really valuable and important. And that's a big piece of the work, is not what's hurting, what's wrong, where are things bad, which is, that's all true, and we've been living with that for years.
mm,
But where are things different, and what's going well or what's going less bad, and how can I notice that, and what does it feel like from the inside to be aware of that? Can I tolerate that? And sort of working to build that. We call it the counter vortex. There's the trauma vortex and the counter vortex. We have to build up the counter vortex in order to attend to the trauma physiology, or else we're just going to be feeding that pattern in our system by giving it all the attention, and
yeah.
then we're on this loop of just,
Yeah, I think you called it
yeah,
once before, re-traumatizing yourself when you're, you know, what you just described just then, when you're focusing on the negative and focusing on the feelings, focusing on those sensations. And
yeah,
yeah, without that kind of anchor point of where, well, I think like it can be quite helpful, like you say, when you're doing this work and you're allowing yourself to feel what you're feeling, and you're allowing yourself to process certain things, rather than, like you say, just going into re-traumatizing yourself, to have a point where you go, right, where can I find safety right now? Where does feel safe in my body? Where's an anchor point for me where I'm in the present, where I can come back to the present?
yeah.
So that, yeah, like you say, you're not re-traumatizing yourself. Um
That's right. And safety might be a huge ask depending on the health of the nervous system. It might be more, where do things feel less overwhelming in my
yeah,
body right now? Where can I feel something supporting me? Oh, I can feel my left butt cheek on the chair, and that feels kind of neutral. And then we just feel that, because safety can be a dicey word. I
Yeah.
mean, if someone can find that, yeah, we want to go there for sure. And it's not always available.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's really good. That I'm sure will give many people a lot of comfort who may be on this journey and wondering why maybe it feels difficult, or maybe it feels challenging, or maybe they are struggling to find those places of feeling safe within the body. This,
mhm.
at the end of the day, this is such a journey. And
Oh yeah.
oh my God, I mean, I've had so many shifts myself within the last like few months or even weeks, but I know that there's a hell of a lot more. The journey is just everlasting. You know, it's I'm right there with you all.
Yeah, same, same.
Yeah. You know, we're
Yeah,
all going through it in some way. And
yeah.
it's just I really wanted you to come onto this onto my channel, because this conversation to me is so exciting and so um you know, for me personally, and I'm sure for you as well, it's been the biggest kind of, oh my God, this is new. What's this? You know, I tried
Mhm,
everything, and this was the thing that was different. This was the thing
mhm.
that physiologically felt different to everything
Yeah,
else that I had tried.
yeah. And I love what you said about talk therapy, because personally, I did at least 10 years of just talk therapy before I even knew I had a body. And that was so important to me to have that time.
Yeah,
You know, I think we need to be able to have that sort of one-on-one, being seen, being heard, believing that somebody actually likes us.
yeah,
Sometimes depending on our trauma, if it was relational or developmental, or, there's so many ways that it can manifest, but to have that foundational experience to sort of help us go into the next stage. This is my experience anyways of my own personal
yeah,
journey of, like, there's been layers, and when I started getting into the body, that was when things really started to change and continue
yeah.
to change. Yeah.
Yeah, I think as well with having, you know, a mentor, whatever you want to call it, mentor, therapist, coach, counselor, um, whatever, that person who can be there as someone that you can be very, you know, you with, express what's going on with, it builds trust, doesn't it? It builds
Yeah.
trust not only with, you know, creating a relationship with someone, but also within yourself, that it's
Mhm.
safe for you to express these things. And
Yeah.
you know, you begin to feel seen and not judged and not, you know, wanted to be any other way than what you are. And it's such a
Mm.
beautiful part of the puzzle, you know, part of
Yeah.
the journey, definitely.
Yeah.
um what other questions well, I think we've answered all of my questions and more, really. But I my last question was, you know, what I think we've already answered it, but I'll ask it anyway. The benefit of the work, the benefit of this work, like what have you found within yourself?
This is the
And
question.
yeah, what's the benefit? How has this helped you? Or, you know, what do you think the benefit of the work is doing this?
Well, first, it feels important to say that this work isn't for everybody. I remember having a call with my supervisor and talking about this, and she said, "It's not for everybody." And I was like, "Oh," because I was fully engaged at that point, thinking like, this is changing my life. It's important to remember, not everyone's going to relate or resonate
Yeah,
with this type of work. That being said, sometimes I feel like the only reason that I do this work is because of the hope and the redemptive factor that exists in working at this level, that I've seen in other people, I've experienced myself. It feels incremental. Like, some people experience significant changes after just a couple of sessions,
mm,
but for a lot of people, it's a process, and it's an incremental process. But I remember in one of my training modules, we learned, um, and I'm not going to maybe articulate this the way that it was shared with me, but there's a theory called the broken bone theory, And it's based on this reality that if you break a bone, if it gets set properly and it's allowed to heal well, it's going to be stronger in the broken place than if the break had never happened. And the nervous system operates the same. If we do good repair at the physiological level, our resilience is going to be greater than if those ruptures at the nervous system level had never happened. And so it's not that, we're happy every time something feels traumatizing to us. It's that if we can do good repair and continue to build our access to regulation and the capacity of our nervous systems and our social engagement, our support groups, so we have places that we can go when we've been through big stuff where we know we're going to be held and seen and cared for. And this is all a process. And for some people listening, this might feel like, oh my gosh, talk about shooting for the stars. But as we do the work, these things can become more accessible and available to us as we continue to heal and repair and build that self-trust. But the fact that we have this potential to be more resilient and have more capacity than before the things happened in our lives that created this dysregulation, to me, that's the only reason that I do this, because that's so hopeful.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful to watch.
And it's I guess it goes in line with, expanding your tolerance for these emotions, for these sensations that your body will produce from time to time, because you're human, because this is part of being human.
Yeah.
And building that self-trust to know that there is a return. There's always a return back to regulation, and having the experience of witnessing that within yourself. When you expand that tolerance for those emotions, then I guess the fear of feeling those emotions is reduced. Therefore, you can experience more joy, because you can put yourself in more situations where maybe you might get hurt, maybe something might go wrong, maybe, the risks of life and relationships are less risky, because you know that you can tolerate whatever happens, whatever emotions may come up within the process, whatever triggers may arise, whatever feelings you might feel in the process of, intimacy, being close with someone, creating a relationship, sharing your ideas, trying something new, going somewhere new, all of these uncomfortable triggers and sensations that might come up. You can tolerate those better in doing this work, in learning your nervous system. And I guess it's also important to say how different everyone is. How incredibly different everybody's experiences and patterns and wiring is, and that this is such individual work too. There's so not a one size fits all for this, and that's why working with someone like you is so valuable, I think, to people who want to learn about this stuff and want to understand themselves better.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, I think that was awesome conversation. I hope everybody who's watched it and listened to it has got something out of it. Is there anything else that you want to say, anything else that you want to share, or anything else that I haven't asked you that you would have liked me to ask you?
Well, you said something a few moments ago and it sparked something, and then I was so enthralled with what you were saying that I forgot it. But it has a quality of, I was just thinking about, as we heal and repair at the nervous system level, it can feel kind of boring.
Oh yeah.
Because
yeah.
if we've spent a lot of our life up here in this sort of higher state of energy and activation, or if we've spent our life down here in more of a shutdown place, where we want to spend more of our time is here, because this is where the good physiological processes happen. Neither of these are really sustainable long term as far as even just basic health goes. So the goal is to kind of start coming down more into the middle. We call it the window of tolerance.
Mm.
But as we start to heal and repair, it can feel kind of boring because we're not doing this anymore,
Mm.
and we're not here. And I really love what you said about, it's about tolerating, like learning to tolerate and then and be with those things. Because I say to a lot of my clients, this isn't relaxation therapy, even though sometimes people get into this really lovely state of parasympathetic nervous system, regulation, where they're feeling their body's regulated. They feel like they could digest food if they wanted to. Things feel really balanced and grounded, and that's lovely. But life is on its own terms. And if I'm being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, I want to run. And if somebody hurts my feelings, I might cry. And if somebody crosses my boundaries, I might need to stand up for myself. So we want to have access to all of these coherent responses to what life brings to us. And sometimes I need more energy for something, and sometimes I need to be down here energetically. And so it's really about just having that responsiveness available so that we have options to respond
Yeah.
in whatever shows itself. Yeah.
Yeah, and giving yourself permission to respond using those options that you have available and becoming aware that they're there, because
That's
through,
right.
yeah, I suppose through, for many people, I think for me as well, definitely, part of my trauma response was definitely, oh my God, so much of the freeze response. I would literally just, I think so many people go into freeze. I think it's such a common one.
It's a very young survival response. It's kind of the only one accessible for a certain
Yeah, yeah,
age group. Yeah.
yeah. I just shut down, depersonalization, derealization, whatever you want to call it. I would just shut down, not really know that I could express my feelings about something, could express my dissatisfaction, didn't feel
Yeah.
loved when I
Yeah.
expressed my dissatisfaction. That sort of thing has
Yeah.
become available over the last year. Yay!
And it,
And it's
can I say something about that?
yeah,
Just because it feels important, because you brought it up. When we go into those states, when we're in freeze or fight or flight, or our nervous system is in that place as a response to something that happened, we don't get to choose that. There can often be some
yeah.
shame that comes in when people go into freeze, when they wish they would have fought or they wish they would have left.
Mm.
Our nervous system makes those choices for us because
Yeah.
at the time it picks the best option to keep us alive and
Yeah.
to keep us okay. And I think it's just important to name that, because when the physiology is running the show in those times, we don't get to choose.
Yeah. And
It's
that's
it's
when
not a cognitive choice.
you often hear, I mean, people saying, why did I do that? Why didn't I just say something? I wish that I'd stood up for myself, or I wish that, and often, yeah, like you say, that makes perfect sense.
Mm,
If we don't
yeah,
get to choose, then, in these situations where autonomic, yeah, or our
autonomic.
autonomic nervous system is just doing this on its own. It knows what it wants to do. It's doing its absolute best to try and protect us. And
That's right. Yeah.
that's something that we can start to bring awareness and compassion for as well, is that our
Hmm.
body's on our side. Our
That's
body
right.
our body is absolutely always on our side. And
Mm,
when you start to see that and start to see it for what it is, rather than something that's trying to hurt you, something that, because I remember doing that with my anxiety. I used to think, I hate my anxiety, I hate it. I used to really, shame it, try and get rid of it, all of these things. And yeah, because it was so incredibly uncomfortable, and I didn't know any other way of processing it or existing really. But now that I look at it, now that I look at the past and I see what was happening, I can see my nervous system was incredibly dysregulated. I didn't know any other way. I hadn't been taught any other way. I
mm.
didn't have any of the tools or the awareness that I have now. And yeah, of course, I was very dysregulated. And I think also, oh God, I could talk for ages about, but like, the other thing I was going to say is that what you were saying before about noticing parts of the body where you're like, why was that different? That's interesting. What was that? That was different. Noticing that different, noticing when something felt good, noticing when something that felt nice. This goes into manifestation, doesn't it? Because the more you notice something, the more you notice it. The more,
Yeah. And
you
you're
know,
feeding it actually by giving
you're
it
feeding
attention.
it. Your neural pathway is creating that you're creating a neural pathway that's directing you to that sensation and that feeling from bringing the awareness and the consciousness to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah, we could go on for hours, really.
good. Maybe we should do another video another time.
Yeah, maybe a Q&A or something.
Yeah, if anyone
Yeah.
has any question, and actually, yeah, if anyone does have any questions or anything that you would like us to address or Tanya to address in another video, then leave a comment below. Let us know what you felt about this conversation and, you know, your experience of this work nervous system regulation. And yeah, how can people find you? If people want to talk to you, if people want to find you, how can people find you?
Oh, that's a good question. I actually don't have a very strong internet presence. It's mostly word of mouth, but you can look up my name, Tanya Wishlove, Wishlove, and my profile for the work that I do will come up.
Okay. Well, maybe I can link that in the description below and they can
Yeah,
find you there. Yeah.
yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
thank you very much for coming onto the Curry Tea channel.
Thank you for having me. It was an honor.
Ah, well,
Yeah,
it's lovely to speak to you, and I'm glad we've been talking about doing this for ages, haven't we?
we have, yeah,
But we finally did
finally
on
for
your
my
birthday.
birthday. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, well, I'm going to end this now and thanks for watching everyone and I will see you in the next video. Bye.